I'm gonna give you 5 key factors that you have to consider if you wanna start getting into distance running. And we're gonna start right now. I think some of the biggest things around distance running is that when you're a bigger person, or if you haven't done it, you start to fear it, and you just don't think you can do it. You don't think it's gonna be worth your time. You think you're gonna fail, and you think that it's too uncomfortable for you to actually enjoy. Especially if you grew up and you were somebody who was more into bodybuilding, more into lifting weights, a power-based sport, or if you've never worked out before. I think especially if you've never actually exercised, it's one of those things that it can be extraordinarily challenging to really get going, and no one actually provides like those simple basics. What are the simplest things that we can do to actually get to that point where you can put one foot in front of the other? And so I think that if you break it down into 5 super simple things and you take those baby steps, you can really start to thoroughly enjoy the activity of distance running. I think that first big trap that we all fall into is that we're reading all these articles and it's like, all right, let's go out and run 10 miles. Let's go out and see if we can run like a 9-minute split. And you go out right off the bat and you're doing that and you hate it, or you can't do it, and you feel like a failure because you're setting these unreasonable standards that really don't matter for the long term. So the first thing you could do is say, base everything around time. So instead of saying, I want to go out and run 10 miles, let's just say this week 1, I want to go out and run 10 minutes. Week 2, I want to go out and run 12 minutes. And you can break it up over 2 days. You can break it up over 3 days. And then you just slowly, think about that. By the 10th week, now you're running 30 minutes. One of the big things that happens is that when you do that, your body can actually adapt a little bit quicker, especially if you're a bigger person. If you're a bigger person and you're carrying a heavier load, it's a lot harder to really start to factor in the miles when you may not have ever run before. So start with time and just base it off of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and then slowly build that up by playing that long game. I think that's a big factor. Time and that long game. And you can base it up over a week and then just slowly chip away at it. That second big factor is actually warming up properly. I think that if you've never really worked out, or someone like myself, who I was really into power sports, doing heavy lifting, your warm-up was usually with just the bar, and then you just put weight on the bar. But I learned pretty quickly from some ankle issues, knee issues, that I had to warm up pretty effectively. And so that could be as simple as, all right, let's walk on a PVC pipe. All right, let's do some split squats. Let's do some easy skips. Give yourself 10 minutes to warm up, and that's gonna help improve your mobility. So the big factor is that some people are starting off, they're reading all these warm-up things, they're reading everything possible around getting into distance running. They get overwhelmed. But again, go back to the time aspect. Warm up for 5 minutes. Then you go to warm up for 7. Then you go to warm up for 8. And slowly, you get a good 10 to 15 minute warm up. You go out, all of a sudden, 10 weeks down the line, you're also running for 25 minutes and you're chipping away at it. So use that effective warm-up. Make sure your ankles, knees, and hips are loose and you're feeling good before you get out. And just remember, it's simple. It's 1 foot in front of the other, 1 foot in front of the other. And that warm-up, it's also gonna be a lot easier to deal with those heavy legs. Your heavy legs, they won't be heavy until a lot later in that workout. All right, so that third key factor that we gotta focus on is gonna be just hammering strength training. And again, I think one of the things where a lot of people err is that they just stop lifting weights. But some of the big factors that you might learn, we got to make sure, our anterior tibialis, our plantar fascia, like our feet, our Achilles, got to make sure that we're doing things like single leg squats. We're doing step ups. We're still squatting. Early on for me personally, I was like, I don't need to keep lifting. And then that led to severe issues in my TFL. Started to get runner's knee. Then what I do? I found some mobility work. I started to go back into peak strength, my app, focusing on the marathon training and that resistance-based train 2 to 3 days a week. And those are going to be the key factors to try and maintain that health. Because one big thing we're forgetting too is that there's a lot of collision in this sport. The only time you're really going to feel this is when you're doing plyometrics, anything along those lines. But running, you're trying to optimize those ground reaction forces. If you can optimize that, you're taking on a decent amount of load on those joints. So make sure you're still resistance-based training. You're maintaining that lean muscle mass, if not still building a little bit, and have some simple goals in the weight room. Getting a little bit stronger, more endurance. You can still use things like the runner's deadlift. You can do simple stuff, upper body stuff, still get a good pump. So make sure that you're not getting rid of that resistance-based training. I'd recommend heading over to peakstrength.app, downloading the app, and actually clicking on the marathon-based training. Because that program is built entirely around how you can resistance-based train as a distance runner. It's structured with specific days, and you can even select that peak date for when you want to run that marathon. And then that's going to take us into the fourth key factor. That fourth big aspect is going to be another one of those that I think we all get paralysis by analysis, where it's like you're reading every single article, watching every YouTube video, going, where do I start? And this comes down to really figuring out your nutrition. Because one thing I think is that you're gonna lose weight mainly because you're actually more focused on your nutrition, because you're noticing, all right, when I eat this stuff at night, like for me personally, if I eat really high fat junk food, I'll get out the next day and feel like a sack. Whereas if I eat a decent amount of rice, sweet potatoes, some lean protein, I feel amazing. And then what ends up happening is you're really starting to pay attention to that stuff because you're starting to thoroughly enjoy the training. And so by optimizing your nutrition, you end up losing a little bit more weight, which also helps you maintain that structural integrity so you're not getting banged up and you're starting to feel a lot better. And that's the key aspect. I do think that you should be dialing in that nutrition as a beginner runner, just because it will help you with weight loss, which will help you with longevity, which will make you healthier. So try and figure out, all right, well, when I run first thing in the morning, if I eat this at night, I feel really good. If I run first thing in the morning and I eat this at night, I feel like trash. You know, use your logic, use sensible understanding, and you can figure that out. But it's really going to be based off of your own personal goals. All right, so that last big factor, I think, is that we all forget while we're even doing it. You know, have freaking fun. Try and figure out how to have fun, but do this. You want to listen to a podcast. You want to listen to a book. I want to see how I feel when I listen to music. I want to see how I feel when I listen to, like, even just like binaural beats to get that rhythm. I think one thing that we also forget about with running, it reminds me of mowing the lawn. You just get into this rhythm, and if you're not listening to anything, you're in your head enjoying it. It's a form of meditation, but it takes a lot of time to get to that point. So early on, you know, when you're beginning, give yourself 3 months. I'm gonna make sure I'm only running 10 to 15 minutes a week, and you build up off of that. I'm gonna make sure I'm doing a good warm-up. I'm gonna make sure I'm eating really, really well, especially the night before I do a run. I'm gonna make sure I'm still resistance-based training, so I'm not losing any of that lean muscle mass. And then finally, the enjoyment comes in. Some long runs, you might want a podcast. You might want a book. Some long runs, you might want to just zone out and get in your thoughts. And you start solving all of your life problems, all the world problems, just because you're enjoying it more. But you've got to recognize that it takes time. Because when you first start doing it, the first month, 6 weeks, it's gonna feel like torture. Your legs are heavy, your heart's racing, and you feel like you're gasping for air all the time. But when you start to get more and more comfortable with it, just like when you first started to lift weights, all of a sudden, it starts to be more and more rewarding. But you've got to be establishing and at least recognizing what you're doing to make it more enjoyable. So try and really cultivate each one of these 5 keys so that you thoroughly enjoy it. Make sure you don't get too deep in the stew. Make sure that you're just starting off simple, slowly building up over time, and recognizing how you feel after you do certain things. The other big aspect, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, the Apple iOS Store. Download Peak Strength today, and then you can either click on the athletic fitness portion or the marathon, and it's going to make your training that much easier to follow through and keep improving those cardio gains. Until next time, peace.